Good afternoon, Packers fans. Aaron Nagler here with your Packers Daily Chat, coming to you live on the Cheesehead TV social channels. It is Monday. I hope you had a great weekend not watching Brewers baseball for your sake, I hope. And Monday. And the Packers are somewhat in the news because the annual league meetings have kicked off down in Florida. We heard from the AFC coaches this morning and a number of general managers, including Brian Gutekunst of the Green Bay Packers. We will hear from Matt LaFleur for the first time in the offseason anyway, tomorrow during the coaches' breakfast for the NFC coaches. But today, Brian Gutekunst spoke with reporters, and it's not like news was made. He kind of confirmed some things and talked about things that he'd already spoken about at the combine, but it is post-free agency, and he did give, some glimpses into their thought process about what they did during free agency, what they didn't do. Clearly, the headlines between Jaire Alexander and Elton Jenkins, outside of that, not a whole lot was revealed. Hey, Brandon McManus, that was a no-brainer, wasn't it? Things of that nature, but as you saw on the channel earlier this morning, it talked about Elton Jenkins moving to center officially, confirming that report from Silverstein earlier in the offseason. Makes all the sense in the world. And of course, he was asked about Jaire Alexander. Not a surprising answer in regards to still working through it. Was asked about the draft being a possible, maybe not deadline, but a turning point in the proceedings. And certainly, acquiesced to the idea that, yes, they'd like to have something done by the draft, but didn't commit to that. Certainly didn't put that deadline as a hard line when it comes to Jaire. Kept open the possibility that Jaire Alexander could remain on the Packers and with Green Bay in 2025. Certainly, you would expect that, given the fact that he's most likely trying to trade him and leaving some semblance of leverage out there. Interesting that he did name check John Thornton, Jaire's agent, saying he has spoken to him or speaks to him every week and has been throughout the offseason. Have to think they're probably working in concert, in tandem somewhat, to try and find a landing spot for Jaire. And I know there are plenty of folks out there, I'm one of them really, who, feels like, why would any team trade for Jaire Alexander and take on the 2 remaining years of his contract when they know the Packers are most likely going to cut him? And Brian talked about the idea of, they have invested a lot in Jaire, both with the first round pick when he was selected, but also the contract that they handed him and the fact that they have invested quite a bit in this player who is very good when he's on the field. And if he's not on the field for the Green Bay Packers and in another uniform, they want some kind of compensation for that. And I am dubious, let's put it that way, that they will be able to find a trading partner. But the one thing where I leave it open as a possibility is we've seen Brian in situations like this before, where it seemed very clear that he was going to cut someone. There was no way he was going to get any kind of draft compensation. And he ended up doing so, whether it was Ty Montgomery back in the day, whether it was Clinton Dix. He has found a way to pry a draft pick away. Now, obviously, those were very different circumstances. They are not nearly the type of player and or contract that comes along with Jaire. But I am willing to be surprised on this. I am willing to sit here until the draft and say, you know what? There's still a chance that Brian pulls this off. But again, consider me dubious. I still think the most likely outcome here is that Jaire ends up getting released. And yes, I do think if push comes to shove, he will still get released, despite Brian saying, yes, there's an avenue towards his return in Green Bay. Hey, man, like I often point out, we have merchandise that says Nagler's never right on it. You are more than welcome to wear it if and when this proves incorrect. But that is my sense sitting here right now, the last day of March. We will see. We shall see. Hello to everybody in the comment section. So good to see everybody chatting it up. Brian's here. What's up, Brian? Stu, right up front saying football. Love it, Stu. Thanks so much for the support. Ian starting us off with a super chat. How are you, man? Aaron, do you believe Goody when he says they're good with the guys they have at edge? I tend to believe him. It matches the lack of action in free agency. I would quibble with your framing of lack of action. I would say they most likely looked at what was on offer or not on offer and decided to pass. I guess I get that the perception outside is that without additions, they are kind of doubling down on what they did last year. And as Brian pointed out, they did some nice things rushing the passer, but it was way too inconsistent. And the trick there, of course, is that a lot of the effectiveness they had when it came to rushing the passer in 2024 was when Jeff Halfley cooked some stuff up, sim pressures, exotics, what have you. We all know when they were rushing strictly as a four-man rush, and I'm not talking a sim pressure where you're dropping guys into coverage and sending guys you're not expecting to try and confuse the quarterback. When they just rushed with four straight up, it was hard to watch at times, right? So when Brian talks about, they have what they need on hand, I do believe him to a certain extent. And I do think they are viewing these guys through the prism of we've made a lot of investments at edge, and we do expect more consistency and more production from the guys on hand. But I got to believe that when they enter, the draft in a couple weeks, certainly they're not going to steer things to engineer. I don't think like we've got to get an edge, but if an edge is on offer and is the best player on their board and the value makes a whole lot of sense from how the board is stacked, I wouldn't be surprised if they made yet another swing in that department, right? But yeah, I think I 100% believe Brian that he says what they need to do can be done with the guys on hand. They expect development and progression from everybody, including their star, Rashawn Gary, who we saw had, I thought, a strong season, but not nearly consistent enough when it came to rushing the passer. And I do think some of that will be charged to DeMarcus Covington, the new defensive line coach, to try and unlock some of that, right? But yeah, I think I buy Brian what he's selling right there, 100%. What's going on here, folks? Stu, what's up, Stu? Craig Brockmiller, how are you, man? Joe, thanks for the super chat. Any chance of lowering Jaire's cap hit by converting most of the base salary to incentives based on games played? Would either side consider that? Obviously, you'd have to ask them, but I would be surprised if Jaire gave any concessions to the Packers. At this point, only going off of what we heard or even heard quoted from that last session at locker cleanout at the end of the season, sure feels like there's a bit of a rift there, right? And it's not just on the Packers side. I do think Jaire, it does feel like Jaire is back in a spot where he would like a fresh start and go someplace else. But, time passes. Who knows where his head's at now? It might be in a different spot. And maybe that is something they're discussing. I'm not going to say, rule it out as a possibility. I find it unlikely, though. Let's put it that way. Craig, how are you, man? Thanks for the super chat. Saw an article that projects Green Bay for 9.5 wins this coming season. Given the Packers have a number 3 schedule, are you taking the over? Why or why not? Oh, I'm 100% taking the over at 9.5, without question. I mean, the Packers had a, quote, down year last year, and they won 11 games. Yes, I am taking the over at 9.5, without a doubt. Jeezy, baby, how are you, man? When Packers rush 4, I drink until I hit the floor. That's the new Motelman 12-inch remix club track. I have to make that into a kind of banger 4 to the floor beat track. That's incredible. She said, Joey, how are you, man? Derek Harmon at 23. That's all I'll say. I love this idea. I think he'll certainly be on offer. I wouldn't write it in pen, much like anything when it comes to the draft. But if he makes it to 23, I would love it if he was the selection. I love his ability, both, rushing the passer and just playing along the interior. I talked about him with Tyler last week on the Draft Industrial Complex. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you do so. Peter, how are you, man? Is the tush push ban gaining momentum? It's always really difficult to tell on the outside looking in. And I know we have reports, some from the Athletic, some from ESPN, kind of with contradicting, framing, but I'm sure inside the meetings down there in Florida that There's all sorts of conversation going on because it is on the table, and that is thanks to the Packers. I do find it fascinating that today, and I'm sure we'll hear this kind of echoed tomorrow when we hear from the NFC coaches, but today, whether it was Brian who was asked about it, or someone like McDermott, the Bills coach, who is on the competition committee, seems the talking points are set here when it comes to the people who are looking to ban it about, it's not about the fairness or unfairness of the play. It's about concerns over player safety and injuries, even though there are zero kind of metrics to back that up. There certainly haven't been any injuries on the play itself that we're privy to publicly. Now, maybe guys have hidden stuff from the public, but we certainly haven't seen that a result bear that out from the play itself at any time. And I noted that Brian said, the league medical people are concerned and want to get out ahead of this. Well, I do feel like that's going to be kind of the drumbeat here over the next 24 hours, where McDermott mentioned something about that as well. I think we'll probably hear it again from a few folks tomorrow. I do find that very convenient, when they can't even produce these numbers or these, concerns that they're talking about medically. Just trust us, bro. Someone's going to get hurt. We're trying to be proactive. I don't know. We've seen no proof of that. We've seen no indication of that. And we have heard people grouse about the play itself and how, quote unquote, unfair it is. I think the biggest thing that needs to get looked at isn't even being talked about, and that's the adjudication of the play. I think the focus needs to be on the officials and how they go about, especially pre-snap, how both teams line up and making sure you're policing the neutral zone. That, to me, is the biggest thing that should be talked about here. But today, anyway, none of those quotes were kind of on offer. But yeah, the tush push, it sure feels like it's being talked about a lot, but I still remain dubious that 24 teams are going to vote to ban it, especially as written in the Packers proposal. But we'll see. That vote will come tomorrow. So we'll probably have an answer by the time we chat here on Packers Daily Tuesday afternoon. Randy, how are you? Could be worse. Packers could always rush 3. Random Packer Dean Lowry. You're right. It could be worse. They could rush 3. But, here's the question. Could you tell the difference? Maybe not. I kid somewhat, although it felt like they were rushing 3 on that first touchdown in the playoffs. I'll tell you that. Aaron Harper, that's awfully harsh. Aaron Harper says, I hate my Brewers right now. Okay, hate? Hate is a strong word, sir. But they've been disappointing so far. That is for certain. Corey Krenz, thanks for the super chat and for being a Carry the G Club member. Appreciate you. Brewers are killing me, man. Plenty of season left, though. Anyway, is Carl Brooks the odd man out when Lloyd comes back healthy? Random Packer Dave Roller. Ooh, nice. Is Carl Brooks when Lloyd? I think you mean Chris Brooks. Carl Brooks is a defensive lineman. Lloyd is a running back. So I'm imagining you mean Chris Brooks. I think training camp will most likely go a long way in deciding that. I could see either scenario where either Wilson or Brooks kind of keep that third running back place on lock, depending on how they look in training camp, right? And obviously, number one is how you perform in pass pro, where I would give Brooks the nod. Wilson had a really good year last year. He definitely improved when it came to pass pro, and he certainly was productive, both running the ball and catching it out of the backfield. But I didn't see anything from him that, you couldn't get from Brooks, and Brooks was a superior pass protector. So long way to go. We'll see how it plays out in camp. Hell, maybe they even add a back late in the draft or in undrafted free agency. But right now, I'd give that a push with a nod to Brooks myself. And also, as a reminder, lot of season left. I mean, when people talking about the Brewers, man, come on now. There's so much season left. I mean, there's like 1 billion games to go yet. Jason, how are you? Thanks for the super chat. If the Packers had the first overall pick this year, who would they take? No trades. That's an interesting question. Probably Abdul Carter, I would suspect. I mean, he's pretty much lock to be the best player in this draft. I'd be surprised if it was anyone else. Simitovich, how are you? Did your apartment get torpedoed by the Yanks? No. However, there's a helicopter flying overhead that just arrived right before I went live, which is very annoying. But no. My apartment is safe and sound over by Citi Field, the good baseball field stadium in the New York area, as opposed to the trash that is Yankee Stadium. And that's right. I called it trash because it is. Jeezy baby, how are you, man? Put your Packer GM hat on. What would you give up to move up and draft Travis Hunter? Feel like we could change the dynamic of the team. I don't know, man. My GM hat would tell me that no player is worth the amount of draft pick compensation it would take to jump up that high, because he is going to be, top 5 pick from 23. I that feels too rich for my blood. I mean, I love it. You love the idea of getting up there and getting a star and someone who's going to change your team and the whole dynamic of your team, as you put it. But I don't know, man. You miss on that, and you get the Saints back when Mike Ditka gave up, a whole draft class for Ricky Williams. I don't know. Is not my scene, man. Craig, thanks for the super chat. Does the expansion in the NFL Global Marketing Agreement pave the way for a, quote, minor league or some other developmental league outside the U.S.? Craig, I highly doubt it. And for those of you who don't know what Craig is referencing, the Global Marketing Agreement, as it were, was expanded today. 4 new clubs, including the Packers, got marketing rights to, when it comes to Green Bay, both Ireland and the UK and Germany. Which just means that there will be special programming and marketing in those markets where the Packers can try and cultivate fandom and engagement and things of that nature. Feels like a no-brainer for the Packers. But as far as a minor football league in Europe, I mean, they've gone that route. And the players, that came out of the league certainly benefited, but the owners lost a ton of money. And I don't see a way forward where they would kind of rekindle that and restart that kind of thing without losing a bunch more money. And that's just not how this group wants to operate. I think it was beneficial. I think it helped produce better football players, but these owners, they don't care about that. They don't care that the product is better. They don't care about the quality of the football being played. They just want football. They'll pay their players. They're going to rake in $1 billion-trillion from their media rights, and then they're going to go off on their yachts that have IMAX theaters on them. That's, producing a better brand of football player and better brand of football. That is way down the list of priorities when it comes to NFL ownership. Menace, how are you, man? Thanks for the super chat. What I don't understand is why all 53 on the roster can't dress. Teams already have to pay them. It would assist in development, less wear and tear for the safety. I don't get why they can't. What's the rule? Well, it's collectively bargained is the rule. Any expansion you would want to make to having all 53 guys dress would have to be included in the next round of negotiations when it comes to the CBA. And, guys have roster bonuses and bonuses for playtime and being active kind of baked into a lot of these contracts. So if you had 53 of them, that's more money for the owners. It's just a way to suppress, having to pay more guys more money. There's no kind of football. Again, this comes back to what I was talking about before. There's no football reason for it other than the owners want to limit as much as they can at every turn, every corner, the amount of money they pay the players. This is, they'll say a lot of different things, but that's what it is. And has been for a long time. Charm City, how are you, man? Thanks for the super chat. Hey, Nags, gutted I can't make it to Green Bay for the draft, but I have one last Cheesehead TV cream ale at the ready for when we go on the clock. Also, random Packer play, Donald Driver TD 49ers in 2010. Oh, boy. Now we're doing random Packer plays? I suppose we've done enough random Packers that now we do random Packer plays. I get it. I'm sorry to hear you won't be able to make it, Charm City, but yes, we will be live for the draft here on Cheesehead TV, both Thursday and Friday night. And if you are one of the folks who will be in Green Bay for the draft, do not forget, as I said on Friday And we kind of officially launched / announced this morning, Corey and I will be hanging out at Stage 1 downtown Green Bay the night before the draft. Wednesday, April 23rd from 8 to 11 p.m. We'll have Carry the G specials, giveaways, some very special Packers guests will be on hand throughout the evening. Come on through. It's going to be a lot of fun the night before the draft, downtown Green Bay at Stage 1 on Broadway. It's going to be a good time. Check it out. Lots of fun. There's no entry fee. There's no tickets you need to buy. Just show up and buy a lot of Carry the G. That's all we ask. What else we got here, folks? We got Joe. What's up, man? Going to send Brewers some torpedo bats. Anything could help at this point. Come on now. Ed, thanks for the super chat. Do some teams have a history of working together, so to speak, in the draft, or is it all cutthroat? I mean, there's relationships throughout the business, right? Where certainly, there are GMs and personnel guys who know each other throughout the league who it's a much easier call to make, but there's no reticence or hesitation of calling any of the teams. But if you know a guy and you have a good relationship with him, i.e., say, for instance, like a Brian Gutekunst and John Schneider who came up in Green Bay together, right? Or back in the day, like Reggie McKenzie and Elliot Wolf could easily get on the phone together. Reggie, I believe now is in Tennessee, right? He can make the call to Elliot and say, hey, this is what we're thinking as far as a potential trade during the draft, whatever. And then those are just some of the, obviously guys who have been GMs, but there are certainly guys kind of lower down the totem pole, so to speak, who certainly know people throughout the league who will say like, hey, we're thinking of maybe jumping up here. What would it take, etc. That all goes on throughout the draft. All those guys have phone calls they make each and every day, all 3 days of the draft. No doubt about it. Menace, how are you, man? Random play. Al Harris did INT the ball versus Dallas in 07. Ooh, look at this. Some controversy right there. You are correct, sir. Absolutely. Brandy, we are so far into the offseason. We are doing cousins of random Packers. All right. Not on my watch. Absolutely not. All right, everybody. I'm going to have to get going. I cannot thank you enough for hanging out, talking Packers each and every day, Monday through Friday, right here on the Cheesehead TV social channels. Please do me a monster favor. Hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and then tell your friends and tell your family, Cheesehead TV. We are devoted to we are devoted to Green Bay Packers fans worldwide. Please hit like, hit subscribe, and then have a good night. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Go Pack, go.